It's the 3rd of May 1997. We're at a sold-out Edgar Street in Hereford, England for the most important match of the season. Just over an hour of the game has been played, and this player is about to take an audacious strike from nearly 25 yards out. These fans behind the goal are 30 minutes away from witnessing the worst day in the club's history. These fans are 30 minutes away from taking a huge sigh of relief. What happens next is about to change the course of history for both these clubs. But to truly understand the magnitude of this moment, we need to take a deep dive. So, what's the big deal? It's the final match day of the 96-97 season in the 3rd division of the Football League. Hereford United sit dead last in the Football League, occupying the one and only relegation place into the conference, also known as the Abyss of Non-League. They're welcoming a Brighton and Hove Albion side who sit directly above them in the table, separated by goals scored. Hereford were made famous across England thanks to their FA Cup giant killing against Newcastle in 1972, when Ronnie Radford scored a screamer to become one of the few non-league teams to knock a First Division side out of the FA Cup. But they've been stuck in the basement division for the past 19 years. In 1983, they were the worst team in the Football League, but Hereford avoided relegation to non-league when their fellow peers re-elected them to play another league season. Fast forward to 96, and Hereford are now managed by the former Wolves manager Graham Turner, who led the Bulls to win 9 of their final 12 games to finish 6th in the league and qualifying for their first ever playoff campaign. Despite losing in the semi-finals to Darlington, the future looked promising. Bear in mind that this was their first league finish above 15th in a decade. As much as the performances on the pitch looked promising, off-pitch matters looked perilous. Hereford started off 96 with mounting debts of over £300,000. They had to sell their star midfielder Richard Wilkin to Colchester and sell their top goal scorer Steve White, who scored 29 league goals last season, to Cardiff City. They replaced him by signing Gillingham's Adrian Foster, who would end up becoming the division's 5th highest goal scorer for the upcoming season. But whilst Foster generated the goals when it mattered, Hereford could not generate the results on the pitch. One win from their opening 7 games left Hereford at the foot of the table in mid-September, but an upturn in form heading into October lifted the Bulls into mid-table. A 3-1 win away at Chester moved Hereford up into 12th, their highest position so far. However, those 3 points gained in the win at Chester would be the same amount they'd gather from their next 13 games. Hereford fell back down to 23rd in the league with a 7-point cushion from the team in last place, who just so happened to be... It's been quite a journey for Brighton fans in just 13 years. In 1983, Brighton went on a cup run for the ages, defeating Man City, Liverpool at Anfield, Norwich and Sheffield Wednesday on their way to a first FA Cup final in the club's history. They held Manchester United to a 2-2 draw at Wembley, but ultimately lost the replay 4-0 5 days later. Brighton fans made the 2 trips to Wembley, not knowing that 7 days earlier, they might have played their last top-flight game for the foreseeable future. 8 years later in 91, the Seagulls made another trip to Wembley, this time in the 2nd Division playoff final, a chance to make it back to the big time 2 years before the Premier League would soon become a formality. They lost to Notts County 3-1. Not only did they lose that heartbreaking playoff final, Brighton and Hove Albion were immediately relegated to the 3rd Division the very next season. Brighton struggled to make a challenge for promotion back to the 2nd tier, falling further and further behind as each season passed, which ultimately led to a relegation in the 95-96 season, which was last season. It's entirely possible that Hereford and Brighton could have been playing in completely different divisions this season, but as Hereford finished 95-96 in playoff disappointment, Brighton finished it with a pitch invasion.
Both sets of goalposts were quickly destroyed.
The deal isn't signed tomorrow. We really don't know if we've still got a football club.
In the final months of the season, Brighton were racking up hundreds of thousands of pounds of debt, so to avoid going under, the Brighton board decided to sell the leasehold of their then 95-year-old Goldstone ground, hoping that the money they received for the ground would help cover the debt. Without consulting the fans or even having a new location in mind, the Brighton fans became outraged and planned to get the final game of the season at home to York abandoned, which actually worked. Brighton fans stormed the pitch and headed to the director's box in protest. Unwilling to leave the pitch, the referee called the game off. Job done. Well, not quite. Brighton were already relegated, so the result wouldn't impact them. But York City still needed a point to avoid relegation, as Carlisle ended up winning on the final day. The game had to be finished 3 days later, which ended up with York winning 3-1. Brighton were now down in the basement division in their last ever season at the Goldstone Ground. As we go back to the table on the 24th of January 97, this is how Brighton ended up 7 points adrift after 28 games played. They started the season going unbeaten in their first 3 home games, beating Chester and Scarborough whilst drawing with Scunthorpe, but away from home, Brighton lost each and every one of their opening 7 league games, taking them into November, where a 3-2 victory over Hartlepool recorded their first away win of the season and their only victory in a span of 17 league matches. However, on the 1st of October 96, in a game at home to Lincoln City, Brighton fans who were still protesting against the board stormed the pitch once again. The game wasn't abandoned like last time, but the league decided that Brighton deserved an immediate 2-point deduction, leaving their position at the bottom of the table perilous. Hereford United went undefeated in their next 7 games, taking them up to 20th, but they still had a 7-point gap to Brighton because the Seagulls themselves picked up 4 wins in that exact same period, bringing Doncaster, Darlington and Exeter into relegation fight. Hereford then stumbled in the final stages, winning just 2 of the next 10 games, picking up 10 points. Brighton won another 5 games across that spring and Easter period, racking up 17 points, nullifying that critical 7-point gap they had to Hereford. Crucially, the Seagulls scored 13 goals compared to Hereford's 10, meaning that heading into the final game of the season, because of how the tiebreakers were set in 97, Brighton sit ahead of Hereford on goals scored.
There has never been a last day scenario quite like the one played out at Edgar Street this weekend. Hereford and Brighton met for a match guaranteed to span sport's emotional extremes. At the end of Saturday, one of them would be dropping out of the Nationwide League.
The stage was set. Brighton needed a point and Hereford needed a miracle. So much so that they hounded out their town chaplain to try and throw out prayers and blessings onto the squad.
Who are you praying for today?
Well, as club chaplain, it has to be Hereford United, most definitely.
They even brought out their mascot, a literal bull, to be their lucky charm if the Lord wouldn't give them the result. The tension in the air was palpable, the pitch was rough and dogged, and the hearts were racing. Hereford had the better of the opening 20 minutes, consistently playing long balls into the Brighton box, causing the goalie Mark Ormerod all kinds of problems. In the 20th minute, with the balls piling on the pressure, a cut back inside the Brighton box was turned into its own net by Kerry Mayo. 1-0 Hereford. This is only Kerry Mayo's 2nd season with the club. He's only ever been through the worst of Brighton. His own goal might have just sent Brighton out of the Football League for the first time in 77 years. Brighton needed a goal fast. They have to do something they've not done this season, and that's score against Hereford. Luckily, there's 2 people in the club they can rely on. 27 of the 52 goals scored so far have come between forwards Craig Maskell and Ian Beard. Their goals alone together account for 15 of Brighton's 46 points, but Maskell has only scored once in the last 8 games and Beard hasn't scored in a month, so it's a good thing that Brighton brought in another forward in February for such an occasion. On the eve of Valentine's Day, Brighton sent a lovely offer of £15,000 to Colchester for their striker Robbie Reynolds. Reynolds had already scored goals against both Brighton and Hereford this season, and in just the 11 games played so far for the Seagulls, he's bagged home and away. Luckily, he's been subbed onto the pitch, and he's right there. And that footballer who's about to take the audacious strike is Craig Maskell. We may not know what the XG on this strike is, but what we do know is that if Maskell scores this, he could potentially save Brighton from oblivion. Okay, let's witness this moment in its full glory.
It's a very poor clearance, helped on by Norton. Returned by Minton. Now, can Baird get there? He seemed to be shoved on the edge of the area. The referee says play on. Maskell's shot! That's off the post! Who's it going to fall to? Reinelt! And Brighton have drawn level. And once again it's Hereford who face the drop into the Vauxhall Conference.
Although Brighton survived by the skin of their teeth, they had an even worse campaign for their next season. It took Hereford 8 long years to get back into the Football League, but by that time, Brighton had already done 3 years in the Championship.